Welcome back to the Sheff United Way, and once again, we're looking into the new Blades manager, but this time, finding out from fans of previous clubs that he's managed. Spicy, I know. We asked James from Reading FC Away Days and Nathaniel from the To Hull and Back podcast to give us the inside scoop on Sellés' time at Reading and Hull. What's his style? Can he adapt? Did the players back him? And are we in for brilliance or bedlam? So without further ado, I'm going to stop yapping and let's find out what they had to say.
Hi there, my name is James from Reading FC Away Days, and I've been asked by Nick to sit down and talk to you guys about recently appointed Sheffield United manager Rubén Sellés. Now, Sellés had a 1.5-year spell at Reading and had to go through some absolutely crazy times that a manager should never really have to go through. Whether it was him having to answer questions in press conferences about whether Reading's ownership had been sorted yet, something that really a head coach shouldn't be doing, whether it was points deductions off the pitch, transfer bans off the pitch, or tactical stubbornness from himself where he refused to change his ways at the start of his spell, Rubén Sellés had a crazy time full of ups and downs. In the end though, I think Rubén Sellés' time at Reading will be looked upon fondly, at least it is by myself. He left the Royals in 6th place in December of last year before going to Hull City, where obviously he was eventually sacked but was tasked with keeping them up, and he obviously did.
Hi there Sheffield United fans, this is Nathaniel from the To Hull and Back podcast. First thing out of the way is that us Hull fans are equally as confused as you are by the whole Rubén Sellés situation. Normally, a club that's come down from the Premier League would go for, someone like a Russell Martin or a Scott Parker who's done it before, or a top foreign manager from abroad who's done it in maybe La Liga or Ligue 1, as we've seen with Sunderland, or they keep their manager, which Chris Wilder, I can maybe understand why Sheffield United would want to get rid of him, considering that they have high expectations. But Luton did get relegated last season, so third isn't so bad. I can understand that Chris Wilder has been there over 2 stints for quite a while, so maybe you would want to bring in someone younger with new ideas to move forward, perhaps. That's the main thing I can think about.
Now, for me, Rubén Sellés had a fantastic movement at Reading, which involved the youth players. Now, Reading's academy is arguably one of the best in the country, producing players like Omar Richards, Jamie Bino-Gittins at Borussia Dortmund, most notably Michael Elise, and that's something that Rubén Sellés used to his advantage. Players like Kalen Vickers, Kelvin Ehibachiman all came through the youth system under Rubén Sellés, even this season seeing the likes of Andre Garcia come through. Now, for me, Rubén Sellés fantastically used the youth side. Something that he did was get rid of the ageing players at Reading and bring in the youthful side of the game. Players like Andy Carroll were ousted from the squad. Sam Hutchinson was made an example of after throwing his team under the bus following a defeat at Shrewsbury away.
Did he improve the squad? Well, we made a lot of signings in January. I would not be surprised at all, not for him to be coming in and starting, but because, certain managers like certain players. Joe Gelhardt, I wouldn't be surprised, because Sheffield United have the money, which we perhaps don't have, him to come in. He was probably one of the marquee attacking players that we signed that didn't get injured in January. So we were bottom when he came in, completely shot of confidence. Tim Volter not only had a very rigorous training regime for the players, but also was really unlikable and drained the confidence of a lot of the attacking players. So people like Abu Kamara improved. Sean McLaughlin moved from centre-back, where he'd been very poor, to left-back. That fielder, it's a square peg in a round hole, but he did okay there. Ruben, I think, had to do that because our other fullbacks weren't performing very well at all. So he did improve us. Not as much as we would have liked, but under him, I think we would have finished 13th, 14th with the squad, the imbalance in particular. We have some good players, but the squad was not balanced, and for him to improve us as much as we did, get some really good results, and he was hindered by the fact that we didn't really have any proper quality up front. He did have to rely on some signings in January, but Gelhardt was a good pick from him, and then Elliot Matazo and Louis Barry both got injured. They were the other marquee signings in January, and they were not fit for the rest of the season, so really there were a few other signings we made in January, but he was able to improve the squad we did have and lift the confidence, which was completely on the ground. I think we'd not won in 8 games when he joined us, and then it was a 10-game run with the previous manager as well by the time we got our win against Swansea, and then from there we were relatively consistent. I don't necessarily see him finishing top 2, but as he likes to say, you will be competitive.
Now, in terms of Rubén Sellés himself, I will say tactically he does get a little bit stubborn, and once he finds his way, he's set in stone. Now, it is a possession-based style of football that we saw from him at Reading, with a high press as well, which saw teams really be caught out with the fantastic work that we saw individuals have on this team. Whether it was Sam Smith up front or Harvey Nibbs in midfield, Reading really relied on that quality and real hard work from them players. Now, he was blessed with a fantastic centre-back in Tyler Bindon as well, someone that was scouted through really and fell in the palm of the hands of Reading, luckily through him transferring from Los Angeles to England and Reading being the team that picked him up. Now, Tyler Bindon has actually been linked with Sheffield United recently, and that is something that maybe we'll see Rubén Sellés link up with him once again.
Essentially, we had 2 styles of play this season. We had, some of our best results just before the last international break. Ruben, and you're going to be hearing this in his interviews, you're going to hear we were very competitive if you lose, and if you win, then the vertical style of football he likes to play. He likes to call it being vertical, which is essentially a nice, maybe the Spanish translation of direct. It's not exactly long ball football. We did regress into that because we were trying to stay up, and I think there were some issues behind the scenes why our form dropped off. Allegedly, the owner told the players which ones were going to be here at the end of the season, so you can assume that for some of them, especially a top scorer, João Pedro, who's left, his performance would drop off because he's told he's not staying. So he can play direct but exciting football. Under the previous manager, we basically bypassed the midfield and went round the wing, or he expected one of our defenders to dribble the ball up throughout the whole pitch. Whereas with Ruben, we had a midfield, Casey Palmer, Gustavo Puerta, players like that in the midfield. Joe Gelhardt were linking up more in the midfield. So it's a direct-ish approach. You're not going to be seeing Russell Martin style football. The possession will be, further down than compared to the other clubs competing at the top of the league, certainly, which I think, if I'm right, is more of the Sheffield United way. I don't think it'll quite like Southampton and Russell Martin, that sort of thing where you have the ball just for the sake of it. Basically, when we had good players and they were fit, we were playing well, and then when we didn't have the players and there were a few injuries towards the end of the season especially, and the pressure was really on, so maybe in the playoffs, if you get there again, it'll be vertical, direct football again, but with better players, which you definitely have compared to us.
Now, like we said, tactically, he was a little bit stubborn to begin at Reading. He played with a 4-2-2-2 formation where he refused to stay away from it. This ended up seeing Reading lose games like Fleetwood Town at home, which really 10 years ago, Reading were looking at the Premier League. Whereas 10 years later, they were looking at getting beat by Fleetwood. Now, for me, I was calling for the P45 because I was fed up with the stubbornness. But following a defeat to Shrewsbury Town away from home, we saw Ruben change his ways, and a 4-3-3 / a 4-2-3-1 was adopted by the Spaniard, and we saw massive results in the change. Reading ended up going on a massive tear and comfortably survived relegation, and then, like we said, ended up finishing, in 6th spot when Ruben ended up leaving the club.
The in-game management is one of the key areas where he's not so strong. He is young, and plus we didn't have that many players on the bench to bring on, but we would go 1-0 down and then we would start playing, whereas we felt like, especially in the home matches where we were very poor, which is a longer term thing, not really his fault, we should have attacked the game and tried to win, because we almost got relegated. We lost at home to Derby, and then we only started playing for the last 5 minutes after we went 1-0 down, and then the substitutions, the timing of those was relatively poor, but again, with the quality that you would be able to bring off the bench, probably going to be a little better, but that is certainly one thing. in-game management wouldn't be so good.
Now, in terms of what Rubén Sellés did, he massively changed the culture at Reading Football Club, and Reading adopted a no dickhead policy, something that Ruben was very, shall we say, proud to have as part of his squad. Now, overall, would I say that Rubén Sellés' spell at Reading was successful? I would say he's been one of the better managers that he's had at the club and had a real connection with the fans, if we're being completely honest. The relationship between Ruben and the fans was always honest from the get-go, and that's something that I always appreciated myself. Ruben was also very honest as well with any answers that he had in the press, whether it was his team playing poorly, whether it was to do with the ownership situation, or whether it was to do with him making mistakes tactically. He would always come out and own what he had to say. Whether Reading was being defeated by Leyton Orient away from home, and he would make the players come over and apologise to the fans, whether it was defeats at Blackpool, etc. I feel like Reading always ended up having that great connection with the fans, and he helped mend that relationship between Reading and the fan base. Now, obviously, Dai Young being the owner, there was massive difficulties going on, whether it was, like we said, the points deductions, whether it was the results on the pitch. Reading really struggled to have that connection with the fan base, but I feel like Rubén Sellés and the group of players that he brought through really helped adapt that comeback to harmony, almost like harmony within the fan base and the squad itself.
The player and the fans relationship, Tim Walter, not only perhaps the worst or one of the worst Hull City managers ever, one of the worst Championship managers ever, extremely arrogant and unlikable. So yes, Ruben, talking about the issues he'd had at Reading. I mean, he's been all over Europe. I think he's been an assistant coach in Spain and Russia and Denmark. It's about 5 or 6 countries. At Reading, he was not paid for a month. He had delayed payment, and that was a salary or a decision he made himself to not receive the money for that month before everyone else on the coaching staff. So, yeah, I'm sure Sheffield United won't have any issues like that, but I think that's a selfless thing to do. So I think he'll be quite liked as long as the results start coming. I don't think anyone will be grated by his personality too much. I assume Sheffield United is going to have a good season, so we were very competitive isn't really going to get too grating. He does say that in every single interview. And then, of course, with the players, there was a moment. Abu Kamara, we'd signed him from Portsmouth. He had a mate at Portsmouth who scored a winning goal for them in a separate match. Kamara himself was at fault for one of his last-minute goal for Middlesbrough to lose at home in the last minute on Sky, which we didn't enjoy. And then he goes on social media and congratulates his mate who scored for Portsmouth, a relegation rival. So, not the very worst thing you can do, but not really timely. Ruben doesn't really give him a public dressing down, but he brings Kamara into the press conference with him and has him apologise to everyone. Everyone at the time thought, that's going to crush his confidence, but actually it worked out quite well. It was a gamble, so he might take gambles with the relationships with players and the fans perhaps, but when Kamara repaid that, got a bit of confidence and had a point to prove, scored 2 goals against Leeds.
Now, will I say Rubén Sellés will be successful? I do think so. Rubén Sellés, for me, is a very good manager, but can be a little bit stubborn at times. He has a great relationship with the fan base as well, and for me, I would love to see Ruben succeed.
Is Ruben the man? We'll have to see. It's a bold appointment. I'm very interested to see how it turns out. Could go either way, but I think he's improved Reading, who were a basket case, and he got them into a playoff position. He improved us just about. If he improves Sheffield United even a little bit, then you're going to be getting promoted. So if that follows that trajectory, then you'll have a good season. So good luck for the season.
So there you have it. Some proper insight from people that have lived through the Sellés experience. Copyright pending. It sounds like there's a lot of potential there, but at the same time, there's red flags. But there's always going to be red flags when fans are talking about their former managers. I'm not saying let's ignore the red flags, definitely not. But it's nice to have a bit of a rounded sort of idea of who Rubén Sellés is and his time at Reading and Hull. And now it's over to you lot. Let us know what you think. Has this changed your opinion on Sellés? Has this reaffirmed some of your previous thoughts? Let me know what you think down in the comments as we head into what's surely going to be a really interesting season.
Ole, ole, ole. Ole,